as a result of COVID, and now more recently as a result of inflation. With a flight to safety in the US dollar, many emerging market currencies have fallen significantly. And so in Africa, when you've got this risk of the value of your rand, for example, being worth less and less on a daily basis, and you having to pay more and more for your daily food, it's perhaps an idea, and some people put their funds into USDC or a stable coin, for example, and then they know that they've got X amount of dollars.
Hello and welcome to the INSEAD Emerging Markets Podcast, where we interview business leaders and emerging market experts on business innovations, market opportunities, and macro-level trends in emerging and frontier market countries. Join us for the next hour to dive deep into the world of emerging markets as we speak with top performers who are successfully investing, working, and living in these markets themselves. Welcome to this month's episode of the INSEAD Emerging Markets Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Lal. Today we're here with Lloyd Brown. Lloyd is the head of emerging markets at Easy Crypto. Easy Crypto prides themselves on being the easiest place to buy and sell crypto right now. They are based out of Australia, New Zealand, where they started, and also the emerging markets of South Africa and Brazil. I'm most interested in learning more about Lloyd's work in South Africa because that sounds like that is where he spends a lot of his time. He just came back from South Africa, so he's adjusting to the time difference, I guess. But before we get into your work at Easy Crypto, I'd love to learn a little bit more about yourself, Lloyd, how you ended up working in crypto. It's a relatively new industry, so I'm always curious on what people were doing before they were in crypto and how that translated. So yeah, if you don't mind, maybe you could just give a quick background on yourself and what led you to working in crypto.
Cool. First of all, thanks so much for having me. Nick, appreciate the opportunity to tell the Easy Crypto story and hopefully help more people in emerging markets get into crypto, especially the unbanked. So I've traded commodities internationally since 1995, always done it myself in my own business. And so I have a reasonable amount of experience with international trade finance, letters of credit, moving funds around the world, the SWIFT system, the banking system, especially with regards to Forex and international payments. And in 2013, I found out about this new digital currency called Bitcoin. It was obviously 4 years after it was launched, but I was really interested in the fact that you could digitally send value around the world. And I thought I was very early on, but I thought this could actually make a huge difference to us international traders who need to move money around the world. And I liked the fact that the transactions would confirm so quickly in about 20 minutes. I'd experienced a lot of challenge in my commodity trading business, whereby I sent funds to pay for freight, for example, and then the bank lost it, and it ended up costing me $80,000 in demurrage because the bank lost my payment to the shipping line. It took them 30 days to find it, and there were multiple instances where I had no control over the funds once they left my bank account, and then I was at the mercy of the bank to do their job and find the funds and credit the right account. And in many instances, I lost tens of thousands of dollars because they just weren't able to manage that. And so I was very interested in looking for a digital payment mechanism that was devoid of the banks, didn't include the banks, because I just saw them as a massive hurdle to making transactions go quickly. And when I found out about Bitcoin in 2013, it was $150 a Bitcoin. I thought, okay, I'm going to buy some of this. So I bought one just to test it. And of course, as you do, I was a trader, it got to 1,000. So I thought, I've made a fantastic profit. I'm going to sell it now. So I did sell it, actually. And it was interesting at that time, in order to set up a wallet, I had a Mac at the time. I had to download the entire Bitcoin Core blockchain. That was the wallet at the time. And then I had to deposit money into some random person's bank account who I'd never met, $150. It wasn't a lot of money, but still, there was no exchanges here in New Zealand at the time. And eventually this Bitcoin appeared in my wallet. And so it was a fantastic system, but there were a whole lot of risks involved in getting into it because it was just so new. So I would never have put large amounts of money in because there just wasn't the checks and balances in place for me. And then I got more and more into the crypto space after Ethereum launched. Unfortunately, I didn't buy any Ethereum. It was 30 cents. I thought, oh, this was expensive. I was buying another digital currency at the time, which was under a cent. I really should have bought Ethereum, a lot of Ethereum at the time, but I didn't. I think we all have those stories about I should have done this and I would have had a lot more money now, but that was not the case. But then in the bull run of 2017, I really was fascinated by all the ICOs. One in particular that I was really interested in was MCO, which is now crypto.com. And I what I did then was I had, with my international trading, I had all these funds in Africa that I couldn't get out because the oil price had dropped down and there were no hard currency US dollars in the particular countries that I was dealing with. And it was really challenging to get US dollars. It would take me anything from 2 to 4 weeks to get US dollars to remit my funds back to New Zealand. And it got so frustrating for me. I researched digital currency traders in Africa. And I found one, and this one was completely above board and licensed. They had a money remitting license and all the licenses they needed in this country. So I got on a plane and I actually flew there, had meetings with their top salespeople, and decided to do a test transaction. And I did my first test transaction, and the funds arrived in my New Zealand wallet within 20 minutes. And I was just amazed at this. And fortunately for me, the bull run had started. So I bought, let's say, $100 worth of Bitcoin. And when it arrived in my wallet, it was $102. So, and then because there weren't a lot of exchanges in New Zealand at the time, there was only Cryptopia, if people remember Cryptopia. There was a 17% premium on Bitcoin in New Zealand. So I was converting my African currencies into Bitcoin, sending them to New Zealand and making a 17% premium on the Bitcoin alone. So far more than I would in my commodities that I was making paper thin 2.5%, 3% maximum before my bank charges. And so I took some of these profits and I put them into MCO, which is now crypto.com. And very fortunately, I was one of the top 200 investors in the ICO. So I've got a black card. It doesn't mean anything now. And when MCO listed and went up, I did sell it and made a reasonable profit selling it, which I then invested in my business in commodity trading. And so that is what really interested me in the whole digital currency system. It wasn't flawless. There were times when I'd buy the Bitcoin in Africa and send it to me, and then the 20 minutes that block took to confirm, I might have lost some money. There were a couple of occasions where I lost maybe $6,000 or $7,000 US dollars just because of the fluctuations of Bitcoin. But on the whole, I made a decent amount of money just on the Bitcoin. And that opened my eyes to how this system can revolutionize the financial system completely. And so because I was selling so much volume on Cryptopia at the time, I contacted them and said, I would love to do something with you guys in Africa because there weren't many exchanges at the time. And what they had decided to do, they decided to do a very simple buy and sell mechanism. So it was a fiat on and off ramp, basically. And that was their next product that they were going to do because they were an exchange. And it was quite a technical thing to place bids, make and take fees, and limit orders, market orders, etc. And it was really quite complicated. Then what happened was they got way too busy because of the bull run and they shelved the idea. But by that time, I'd now set up a number of companies in Africa in order to do this joint venture with them. And so these were all set up and then they just lay there doing nothing until such time as they eventually, unfortunately, had a hack and they're currently in liquidation, Cryptopia. Still. So what they did is they introduced me to Janine Granger of Easy Crypto, and subsequently Janine and Alan had started Easy Crypto here in New Zealand. And once they started Easy Crypto here in New Zealand, they weren't going to reward the public with a 17% premium. Their entry into the market in New Zealand significantly reduced the premium. So instead of being 17%, they decided that they were going to offer a fair market price for Bitcoin. So then Bitcoin became priced in New Zealand very similarly to around the world, which is really good for the New Zealand market. It gave great access to Kiwis to be able to buy Bitcoin at reasonable prices. And because their system, the Easy Crypto system, was so simple and easy for most people to use, they grew exponentially. And then they became basically the biggest crypto company in New Zealand. And they decided that they wanted to expand internationally. And at that time, Cryptopia introduced me to Janine, and I had a meeting with her. And because I already had all these companies set up to do exactly what they were doing, it was quite simple to reach an agreement with them. And Janine and I agreed that I would front end it. So I registered a trademark called Kiwi Crypto, and they would provide the platform services, the back end, basically the trading service, and et cetera, et cetera. So I set up South Africa as well as Nigeria because these are the markets that I'd traded in for decades and knew reasonably well. And we launched, it took me 9 months actually to get all the payment rails and the bank accounts open, because getting a bank account for crypto companies is incredibly challenging. It's really hard. Fortunately, with my connections in those two countries, I knew the banks well. I'd done a lot of business in terms of commodity trading, so they knew me, and I was able to get bank accounts opened. And then we launched in South Africa and Nigeria, and we started to offer our services. Now, what's interesting about Easy Crypto is we make it really simple. It's basically like an online shop where everybody's used to going to buy stuff online, where you say, I want to buy X amount of this, I want to buy three shirts, and I want to send it to this address. Easy Crypto is that simple. You basically say, I want to spend $100 or 500 Rand or 1,000 Naira on Bitcoin, and I want to send it to this address. And that address will be your own wallet, because we're non-custodial. We believe in the customer owning their own crypto. We may in the future become custodial, but at this time, all of our customers send their funds to their own wallet. So we only have their funds for maybe 2 minutes. As soon as the funds hit our bank account, our system automatically will pick up their unique reference number and send the order out to them. And so the interesting thing for Easy Crypto is there's huge adoption in South Africa. There are over 7 million people in South Africa, as far as our research indicates, who own crypto. But there's a much bigger market that is available, because there are millions of people in South Africa that are unbanked. So what we are looking to do in the emerging markets is to offer an easy on-ramp crypto for people, where they don't have to learn how to work an exchange, where they have to learn how to place orders, limit orders, market orders, calculate and make a take-in fees, deposit fees, withdrawal fees, etc. The price that we have on our website is basically the price that we're going to sell to you, and we send that to your wallet. There may be a little bit of gas fees in terms of the ERC20 tokens, for example, but otherwise all of our fees are built into that price that we show. So that's the history of Easy Crypto and how I got involved.
Thank you. Quite an interesting background. Really appreciate it. Also, I was curious if you could just quickly tell me how you ended up in commodity trading in Africa in the first place. What led you to working on the continent? I feel like that could be an interesting story as well.
Oh, right. So I'm originally from South Africa. I was born in South Africa, although I've lived in New Zealand for 17 years. And I always wanted to run my own business. I was very entrepreneurial. My dad owned a trading store back in the day, and I'd used to pick oranges and apples off the trees in the orchard and sell them, in a store and keep all the profit for myself. And when I was 21, I started my own business, which at that time, and it still operates today, actually. So it's over 30 years old. It's called Panga Trading in South Africa. And I first started selling fruit juice and beverages, basically, out of South Africa into West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, and some of East Africa as well. And I grew my business and then became an agent for Coca-Cola cans, because there weren't any can plants in most of West Africa. The biggest can plants were all in South Africa. So I was exporting Coca-Cola cans into West Africa, and I was the agent for Ghana. I was very young. I was only 20-something at the time. And my business grew to such an extent that I needed help. So I asked my dad to come and join me. He was a really good salesman. And he joined me and went and opened an office for us in Ghana. And in Ghana, West Africa, we started selling all sorts of fast-moving consumer goods, Kellogg cereals, Coca-Cola, fruit juices. And one day somebody said to him, can you get us ethanol for making beverages, alcoholic beverages? And he sent me this message at the time, and I managed to source some alcohol in South Africa from a local producer. And we shipped 1 container, and then we shipped 5, and then we shipped 10 and 20 and 50 and 100, and it just grew exponentially. And then we were shipping so much with the shipping lines that the shipping lines started referring us to their clients who couldn't access ethanol from other places. And so then I got into Nigeria and Kenya and Tanzania and all sorts of African countries. And that's basically how I got into trading. My margins were very small. I had this business strategy of pricing the product very well and relying on volume in order to do a reasonable turnover. And that served me very well for around 20 years. I traded ethanol for a long, long time. It also taught me a huge amount about letters of credit, factoring your invoices, international finance, how the banks operate. It was really a very, very educational time for me.
Sure, that's really interesting. And I'm sure it's given you both the thesis for Easy Crypto and a lot of background to make it easier to expand on the continent. I'm curious what the barriers to adoption for crypto maybe there. You mentioned that there are 7 million in South Africa that own crypto, which is really pretty impressive. But as you've mentioned, you're not custodial. And I mean, I think it takes a bit of knowledge for people to understand how to get their own wallet and so on. So how does that factor into your expansion plans? And what do you do to overcome this or other barriers to adoption that there may be there?
So there are a few barriers to entry in South Africa. One of them is just people understanding about digital currencies. Many people are interested in it. They've heard about it. Everybody's heard about Bitcoin and Ethereum and probably Doge, because Doge was very popular back in February last year when Elon Musk was tweeting about it. And it's just the understanding of how it works, how you would get set up and buy some cryptocurrency, and how you would set up a wallet. So many of the exchanges are custodial, and people can just deposit their funds and send, and then the exchange will hold those funds for you. But those aren't really in your control. So there's this trope in crypto: not your keys, not your crypto. So your keys, basically your 2412 words that give you access to your wallet or your funds on the blockchain. If you're not in control of those, it's not really your crypto. If you've given it to an exchange, the exchange holds those keys, and anything can happen with that unless they look after it really, really well and the security is good. So in terms of barriers to entry, education is one, and the second one is setting up your wallet. However, we on Easy Crypto have a massive portal that teaches all of our customers, and in fact anybody, because we don't gatekeep it. Anybody can go onto our learning site and learn about crypto, right from what is blockchain all the way through to setting up wallets, DeFi, etc. And we have many videos on our site on how to set up wallets like Exodus, Trust Wallet, Trezors, Ledgers. We go through the whole gamut from hot wallets all the way through to hardware and cold storage wallets. So if people just follow our videos, they can easily understand how to set up a wallet, especially on their mobile device. In Africa, obviously mobile devices are enormously popular. I think a recent metric came out where there's 7 billion people on the planet and we have 11 billion mobile connections. Many people in Africa will have two connections because the networks don't have enough coverage. So they have these phones that you put two SIM cards in, and they can switch between networks just to ensure that they've got coverage throughout the day when they need it. So this mobile prevalence, it's actually not a barrier to entry because people are able to download a wallet off the Google Play Store, the iOS Store, or the App Store, and install a wallet and then place their first order. And the good thing about Easy Crypto is we make it really simple. It's placing an order on a website. All the other exchanges, you have to send funds in to the exchange, wait for the banks to do their 2-day transaction time. In South Africa, transactions in banks from bank to bank take between 1 and 2 days. And so if you don't bank with the same bank that your exchange is with, then you're going to wait 2 days for your funds to arrive. And if you're wanting to buy a coin that you think is at a good price now, that can get very frustrating for people because they think Bitcoin's at a good price now, but they're going to wait 2 days for their bank. What we do is we have some payment rails that enable us to deliver the coins to the customer as soon as we get the call from our payment rail to confirm that the funds are on our bank account. And in most cases, that'll take 2 minutes. So a customer can sign up with us, verify, do all their KYC, verify themselves, and then place their first order, for example, Bitcoin, and pay for it. And then in 2 minutes, it'll be in their wallet. So that makes it really, really simple. So we're trying to remove the barriers to entry. So in our case, the real only barrier to entry is that you have to set up your own wallet, which we solve for by educating people both in written documents in our website as well as videos to show them how to do it.
That's great. Sounds like you've thought this through very well. What do you see as the biggest or at least easiest to achieve use case for crypto in these emerging markets? Why do you think it has the potential to serve the unbanked in them? Or what other opportunities do you see for crypto in emerging markets?
So there are a number of use cases I see in Africa. One of them is remittances into Africa. So there are many, many people, hundreds of thousands and millions of people all working outside of Africa, in the US, Asia, in the UK. And many of them are sending funds back into their families to support them in Africa. Nigeria, for example, has a $40 billion a year, what they call a diaspora. So the diaspora are the people who live outside of Nigeria, but they're Nigerians. And the diaspora send $40 billion a year back into Nigeria. And most of that, almost all of it, will go through the banking system. And in South Africa, this is also true. Lots of South Africans out of South Africa, living in places like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the UK, the US, also sending funds into their family in South Africa to support them. In South Africa, the economy has really taken a lot of strain from COVID, as well as the government or the parastatal power producer is struggling financially, and they're having multiple blackouts every single day, planned blackouts every single day because there's not enough power to support the economy. So anything from 2 to 6 hours a day, the power will be off. And this is creating huge hurdles and difficulties for business, especially ones that rely on power. So the unemployment rate in South Africa has skyrocketed, and it has actually one of the highest unemployment rates in the world now, especially amongst the young people. So I believe the under 25s, there's an up to 66% unemployment rate with those people, which is just insane. We just can't even comprehend that in the OECD first world countries. And so when these people are sent money from their family overseas, the bank charges in sending this money is really very high. If I send money into South Africa, which I do because I send money to family as well, I will pay here in New Zealand. If I want to send $1,000, which will equate to about 10,000 Rand, I will pay a $15 bank fee here in New Zealand. It'll take 2 days to arrive. When it arrives in South Africa, there will be a 450 Rand, which is a $45 fee, and then my family member will get the worst possible exchange rate that they could. It won't be the spot rate. It'll be the bank buying rate. And so they'll lose money over there as well. And so this is something that could absolutely change the lives of people in Africa if cryptocurrencies are used to send funds into them. I recently did a transaction where I sent USDC from my New Zealand account to my South African account. And when it arrived in South Africa, there was actually 3% more than what I sent, because there's a premium in South Africa because of exchange controls. So not only did it arrive in 10 seconds because it was on the ERC20 blockchain, but I got 3% more, and it was in my bank account in South Africa within 15 minutes. So that is a major potential time saver as well as cost saver for people in Africa. And the other benefits to them as well, for example, DeFi. DeFi democratizes finance. So although it's quite complicated at this time, one of the easiest things to get involved in is crypto gaming, where you have play to earn games like Access Infinity, for example, is one of them. And there are many, many games coming out. Compete's another one that's going to be on all the platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. And then these people who don't have jobs can then play these games and earn small amounts of cryptocurrency, which they can then sell just to buy their daily needs allowances, for example, food and pay for housing, etc. There was recently, in the last bull run, the Philippines, during COVID, so many people had to close their stores because they couldn't operate. And Access Infinity was a massive game then during COVID. And many people played the game and actually got by and got through COVID by just selling those tokens and having their cars repaired and paying their rent, etc. So that represents a great opportunity, I believe, as well. And then, of course, DeFi. So many people in Africa don't have bank accounts. To be able to have some funds on your telephone and then go and spend them. So in South Africa, Pick n Pay, which is the largest retailer, one of the largest retailers in South Africa, grocery stores with way over 2,000 stores, you can now take your phone and you can pay for your groceries with Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. So very slowly but surely, cryptocurrencies are becoming more mainstream in South African emerging markets, and it enables people to be in control of their funds, hedge themselves against the fluctuations of their emerging market currencies. Through COVID, many currencies have devalued significantly as a result of COVID, and now more recently as a result of inflation. With a flight to safety in the US dollar, many emerging market currencies have fallen significantly. I mean, even the New Zealand dollar has depreciated, actually. And so in Africa, when you've got this risk of the value of your rand, for example, being worth less and less on a daily basis, and you having to pay more and more for your daily food, it's perhaps an idea, and some people put their funds into USDC or a stable coin, for example, and then they know that they've got X amount of dollars that they can then convert as the emerging market currency devalues. And then they go to the grocery store and buy their food for the day with that. So these are just some of the potentials. One of the other potentials is earning interest. So instead of putting your funds in a bank account and earning 1 or 2% because traditionally our interest rates have been very low, well, you can start with $1 and put $1 into a DeFi fund and earn 12 to 20% depending on what that fund is paying out. And so that democratizes finance significantly because you don't need to put in $5,000 or $10,000 into a hedge fund as a wealthy person to earn decent return. So those are just some of the aspects of digital currencies that can change emerging markets significantly and improve the lives of the people living in them.
Yeah, that's all really exciting stuff. You see these applications in the more developed countries and they're fun and exciting, but it doesn't change people's lives so much as they do in emerging markets where you see the depreciating local currencies and lack of ability to earn money during pandemics. And yeah, it's very cool. Just to clarify, when you're talking about remittances, that's typically like stable coins like USDC, or would it be Bitcoin or other coins as well?
Back in the day, talking about 2017, 2018, most people would be sending Bitcoin actually, into their family members' wallets, and then they would sell that Bitcoin locally. I think as people are becoming more experienced in cryptocurrencies, they're understanding that Bitcoin has these massive price fluctuations, and on a good day, they might make 5-10% extra, but they could also lose 5-10%. And so they're understanding that stable coins are perhaps a safer, more equitable way to send funds around. And so USDC is gaining in popularity, and USDT as well. So USDT and USDC are two of the coins that we are selling a lot of in South Africa from people sending my funds in.
Makes sense. So how are the governments in these countries reacting to crypto and blockchain? Are they more favorable towards them, or are some more open than others?
So that's a very interesting question because we operate in both South Africa and Nigeria. We had to turn our Nigerian site off actually in February last year because the Central Bank of Nigeria came out one Saturday morning, one Friday evening in Nigeria, and basically said to the banks, you may not deal with digital asset or cryptocurrency companies anymore. You may not bank them. You may not receive funds into your bank from their customers, and they may not pay customers out. So what happened in Nigeria was the entire market went P2P, literally overnight. So all the big players like Binance, Huobi, FTX, etc., they all operate a peer-to-peer system in Nigeria. And so they're two extremes. So the Nigerian government basically has not embraced it. They've made it more challenging to deal with, actually, whilst still launching their own CBDC. So the e-Naira, they've launched the e-Naira, which hasn't had as much uptake as they expected to. And people are still trading P2P, peer-to-peer, in Bitcoin and USDC, etc., in Nigeria. And on the flip side, we have South Africa, which has just come out and declared 2 weeks ago that digital assets are classed as a financial asset and that they now fall under the Financial Services Conduct Authority, which is fantastic news because what this does, it legitimizes digital currencies in South Africa, and they're now going to be regulated, which will bring them into the net of the government, of the exchange control mechanisms that they have, and will make it much better for everybody in South Africa to now deal in cryptocurrencies because they will be regulated. It's going to significantly increase the safety of them. And South Africa has, over the last 3 years, had some terrible, massive scams where people have lost billions of dollars. And the licensing of cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency traders and companies will hopefully stop a large amount of these bad actors scamming people out of their hard-earned funds. It will also assist the South African government to bring cryptocurrencies within the exchange control mechanism. So at the moment in South Africa, they have exchange controls, and if you want to send funds in or out of the country, you have to fill out a form for the government if you're a business, and you have to give it a category. So, for example, exports, imports, selling gold, providing digital services, any of these things, you have to declare what category your funds are flowing into or out of, and that enables the government to regulate the local currency and protect it to some extent in terms of value. With cryptocurrencies, there's no category to say that I want to send Bitcoin out of the country or bring Bitcoin into the country, and therefore it falls outside of that net. By making it a regulated financial asset, it brings it into that and now enables the government to control it. As a result, the price in South Africa of Bitcoin because it wasn't regulated, there was a massive premium back in 2017 of about 15%. And that's slowly come down as people have taken advantage of the arbitrage opportunities. And now it's still about 3% higher in South Africa than globally. Bringing it into the financial system, making it an asset, is going to remove that premium that South Africans are paying. So South Africans, by virtue of the government regulating it, will now be able to buy cryptocurrency at a globally equitable price. So that's another really good prospect for the South African ecosystem.
That's great. Sounds like things are definitely moving in the right direction there in South Africa.
Yes.
I have one last question for you. What would your advice be to someone who's living in an emerging market right now or is from an emerging market and wants to get involved in crypto? They see the use cases you've mentioned. They want to save more on the remittances. They want to protect themselves against currency devaluation, but they don't really know how to get started. What would be the first step someone should take if they want to get involved in crypto and they have no knowledge right now about how to do so?
The first step that I would take if I was brand new to crypto was educate myself as much as possible. There's a huge amount of resources on the net about cryptocurrencies. And the other most important thing I would say to people who want to get involved in cryptocurrencies is don't give your money to anybody to invest for you for a big return. Cryptocurrency does not produce large returns. It just doesn't work that way unless you really know what you're doing and you're an absolute expert. Most people, especially when you're starting, should just buy the cryptocurrency and hold it either in an exchange that is a licensed exchange, and you can verify that they have all the licenses, they're a registered business, they in the company's office, or the government can confirm that they're actually operating. Do research on who the people are behind it, who's running the companies. And if you can't do that, then it's best to take your cryptocurrencies and store them in your own wallet, either on your phone, write your keys down, your 12 or 24 words. Don't give those to anybody. Don't save them digitally. Keep them in a very safe place, more than one place if you can, and just keep your cryptocurrency yourself. Then just buy and hold. It's very challenging to make money trading cryptocurrencies because the price is very volatile. So people new to crypto should just get started with small amounts of money, not invest more than they can afford to lose, and just slowly educate themselves. That would be my advice. And it's not financial advice. I'm not giving financial advice here of what to buy. I'm just saying that people should be very safe and careful with how they approach it. Education is key.
Sure. Definitely don't want to be one of the people who ends up getting burned. So one last question really now, because you mentioned it earlier and I'm actually a little interested myself. You talked about making as much as 12 to 20% interest on some of these DeFi funds. And I was wondering, how would you go about doing that? What would be the process if this is something that you're actually wanting to do?
Yes. So exactly. This is where things get really, really technical, right? There are very wide disparity of returns in DeFi. So if you simply want to invest, take your fiat currency, say your rand or your Nigerian naira or your Kenyan shilling, and you want to convert it into USDC, and then you deposit into a DeFi fund, you can earn anything from 2 to 4% probably. So that's probably the safest and the lowest returns. But as you get more and more experience, you start to learn about all sorts of other DeFi opportunities that exist in the cryptocurrency space. And some of those are really technical, where you provide liquidity to the decentralized exchanges. And so where you will deposit USDC, for example, and Ethereum, and you'll deposit both of these into an exchange and provide liquidity. And then the automated market maker of decentralized exchanges, so now this gets super technical, will then trade those basically to other people who want to buy and sell, and you will get a small cut of the fees that the decentralized exchange earns. And so then you can earn much larger returns. But it is also very high risk, because the more well-known the coin, the smaller the return. So if you're doing, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, that will be a small return. But if you're doing a very, very brand new coin, you might get massive returns of maybe even 100%, but you have the risk that the coin plunges in value and goes to nothing and you lose all your money. So that's where it's really important to understand exactly what you're doing, understand the projects that you've invested in, and who the people behind it are, the legitimate, etc. So DeFi, if you educate yourself and you become more and more experienced in the DeFi products, then you can earn really good returns, as long as you're careful and you don't invest more than you're prepared to lose, of course.
Wonderful. This is all really interesting stuff, and it's a topic I'd like to cover more and more on this podcast if we can, because it seems that this is an innovation that really has the opportunity to transform lives in these emerging markets, much like smartphones did when they first came out. It really allowed a lot of these emerging markets to leapfrog ahead, as they called it, and it seems like this financial innovation has the opportunity to have similar effects. So thanks so much for joining us, Lloyd. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and speak with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Nick. I've appreciated being on your podcast and wish you well, and keen to hear some of the other guests that you have on in the future.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the INSEAD Emerging Markets Podcast. To stay up to date on events we may be hosting, emerging market news, and to build your personal network, please feel free to join the INSEAD Alumni Emerging Markets Interest Group on LinkedIn.